Hello everybody, welcome to my channel. I'm here to review the Pro Wrestling Illustrated January 1992. So let's get to reviewing. There's an ad for Rick Rude's own phone hotline. Get Rude on the phone, pin Rick in the ring, and win a personal visit from Rick for a rude awakening. Yeah, I guess this was between, this is before Rick Rude came to WC. This was after he left WWF and before he went to WCW, so guess he needed a way to earn some money, I guess. Somebody ripped out the table of contents page. Between the falls, where the fans write into the magazine. Ringside with Bill Apter. This is when they have all the latest news. And this, unfortunately, when they have to talk about the death of Chris Von Erich, who passed away, who committed suicide, and just the whole tragedy with the Von Erichs. Everybody knows their story. I've seen Chris wrestle a couple of times. It was usually in mixed tag matches. It was him and Chris Adams and Tony Adams versus Steve Austin, Jeannie Clark, and Percy Pringle. So those are the matches I saw with him. I never seen him team with Kevin. I never seen him team with Kerry. I don't know if those matches ever happened, but just a sad story. Because you could have think that if he was too small to wrestle, he could have been like the troubleshooting referee or something, But the Fritz had already sold World Class, and it was USWA by now. So, and the Von Erichs were not the top guys. So, I guess, and all he wanted to do was wrestle. So, yeah, just a sad story. Sad story. Okay, from the desk of Stu Sachs. This is where he just reprinted an interview from Wrestling 86 where Vince McMahon did a show with Larry King. And this is when Vince was talking in 1986. Vince was talking about wanting Ric Flair to join WWF. So this was in '86. So this was during the time in that time, 91, when Rick was joining WWF. They were just showing, Stu was just showing how Vince always wanted Ric Flair, even back in 1986. Win, lose, or draw. This is Larry the Axe Hennig talking about Harley Race. They were partners back in the day, and he was just telling Harley Race stories. In Focus with Craig Peters. They call this the other Flair vs. Hogan, because obviously the big dream match was Flair vs. Hogan, but the other dream match was the Ultimate Warrior vs. Sting. And this was, of course, after SummerSlam, and Ultimate Warrior was gone from the WWF. And they wondered what happened if he showed up in WCW. They could have the other dream match, which would be the Ultimate Warrior vs. Sting. And then, of course, they continued talking about Chris Von Erich, and just what a sad tragedy that was. The Steel Cage with Bob Smith. He's talking about the Weekend of Champions Wrestling Convention with John Arezzi. And he had Ric Flair. This was after Ric Flair left WCW, but before he joined WWF. So they weren't sure what was going to happen. They had him. They had Bruno Sammartino. They had Buddy Rogers, Lou Thesz, Angelo Poffo. So just a bunch of people at those conventions. Eddie Elner with Off the Top Rope, where he just answers fans' questions. in a very funny, sarcastic way. You have the official ratings. The top 10 is the top 10. Number 1, the WCW World Champion Lex Luger. Number 2, the WWF World Champ Hulk Hogan. Number 3, the Intercontinental Champion Bret Hart. Number 4, the US Champ Sting. Number 5, Ron Simmons. Number 6, the USWA Champ Jerry Lawler. Number 7, the Global Heavyweight Champion, The Patriot. Number 8, the WCW TV Champ Steve Austin. Number 9, Barry Windham. Number 10, Sid Justice. The top tag teams. Number 1, the WWF World Tag Team Champions, the Legion of Doom. Number 2, the WCW World Tag Team Champions, the Enforcers. Number 3, the USWA Tag Team Champions, Robert Fuller and Jeff Jarrett. Number 4, the Natural Disasters. Number 5, the WCW US Tag Team Champions, the Patriots. Number 6, the Nasty Boys. Number 7, the Freebirds. Number 8, Chris Walker and Steve Simpson, the Global Tag Team Champions. Number 9, the Beverly Brothers. And number 10, the Pacific Northwest Tag Team Champions, the Grappler and Don Harris. They also have the top 10 managers. Number 1 is Harley Race. Number 2 is Jimmy Hart. Number 3 is Lady Blossom. Number 4 is Paul Bearer. Number 5 is Alexandra York. Number 6 is Teddy Long. Number 7 is Christopher Love. Number 8 is Tojo Yamamoto. Number 9 is Slick. Number 10 is Tony Rumble. It's a time capsule where they have a bunch of old pictures with a lot of the legendary superstars of the past. They have a picture of the Destroyer with the star of the TV show Dennis the Menace. Was it Jay York or something like, not Jay York, but yeah, Jay North. Okay, yeah. And they got Wild Bull Curry. They got Wrestling Bear, Victor the Wrestling Bear. Superstar Billy Graham in an arm wrestling contest with a fan. And Dick the Bruiser. Wrestling's Unsolved Mystery. What has become of the Ultimate Warrior? So, of course, this was after SummerSlam. He was gone from the WWF. And, he just disappeared. You kind of wonder, did he ever have talks with WCW? Because, he had been in and out, and he's been in and out in WWF so many times. During those times, did he ever have any conversation about coming to WCW? Because, like I said, we could have got that dream match of Sting vs. Ultimate Warrior. The press conference with Rick Steiner, and this is after Scott Steiner was injured by the Hardliners, so he's talking about teaming up with Bill Kazmaier and wrestling singles, but he's mostly waiting for Scott Steiner to come back so they can get the tag team titles back. Ric Flair. He'll make Hulk Hogan look like an amateur. This is the build up to the whole Ric Flair versus Hulk Hogan match. When I saw Bobby Heenan bring that 10 pounds, not the 10 pounds, but the big gold belt on I guess it was Wrestling Challenge at the time. I was in shock. Because I wasn't into the newsletters, so I didn't know nothing about it. So to see Bobby Heenan show up with Ric Flair's belt, I was like, oh my God, we finally going to get the match that we've been waiting for. Hulk Hogan versus Ric Flair. And how we all expected that match to happen, and it did not happen at a main show is crazy. But it said, they asked a lot of people, they asked a lot of certain wrestlers what their opinion of the match was, what the opinion of the outcome would be, and it was Buddy Rogers. They asked, allegedly asked Buddy Rogers, and Buddy Rogers said that Ric Flair would make Hulk Hogan look like an amateur. So, it's just crazy that that match was not at WrestleMania 8. They said, they had a bunch of local shows, and spot show house shows, and the crowds didn't draw as well. And they said that a lot of WWF fans just watched WWF, and they didn't know Ric Flair, so that's why they didn't draw as well. But I'm like, well, if you would have kept Ric Flair on your TV and promoted Ric Flair versus Hulk Hogan for from August to WrestleMania 8, by that time everybody would know Ric Flair, and that match would have been a big deal. You cannot tell me Hulk Hogan versus Ric Flair at WrestleMania 8 would not have worked. I don't know what went wrong on that. If they would have promoted that right, which they would have, Hulk Hogan versus Ric Flair would have been awesome. And I just think, because with Hulk Hogan was leaving at the time, Hogan was leaving after WrestleMania 8, it would make sense for him to lose, since Flair's going to be around and Hogan's gone. But I figure, Hogan ain't want to lose. That didn't work that doesn't work for him, brother. So I just believe he didn't want to lose to Flair, and they probably wanted Flair to win since Flair was going to be around. But Hogan probably didn't want to lose, so they probably scrapped the match. That's my opinion, but I don't know what else. Nothing else doesn't make any sense, because if you would have promoted that match right, Flair vs. Hogan at WrestleMania 8 would have been a big deal, because they did it at years later in WCW. So, okay, breaking down the WCW World Champion, why Lex Luger is despised and admired. Lex Luger, there was so much promise in him to win the World Championship right out the gate. These magazines, they love Lex Luger. He had his picture in all the magazines about being a future champion. So, I guess, it was, they knew he would win the belt, but I guess they were surprised how long it took for him to win. And then he never beat Ric Flair for it. Ric Flair had to leave before he won the belt. So he finally did win it, but he did it, with the help of Harley Race and Mr. Hughes. So I guess the people admired that he finally became champ, but didn't like the way that he did it. PWI Dream Tournament Final. It's Sting vs. Hogan, and you decide who wins. So y'all used to look at this and think this was cool to have fans vote on who they think were the best wrestlers. And it came down to Hogan versus Sting. Special fan poll vote for 1991's best wrestlers and matches. So these are the nominee candidates. These are the candidates for the 1991 awards. So candidates for 1991 Rookie of the Year: Johnny B. Bad, Chris Candido, Van Hammer, Bill Kazmaier, The Lightning Kid, PN News, The Patriot, Terry Powers, Chris Walker, and Rob Zawowski, which wound up being Rob Van Dam. And I'm pretty sure Johnny B. Bad won, but they had some future greats in that class. Chris Candido, Lightning Kid, Rob Van Dam. I guess the Patriot to a degree, I guess. Okay, most improved wrestler of the year. The candidates for 91 are Tony Anthony, Steve Austin, Cactus Jack, Chris Chavez, which was Tatanka, Steve Dahl, Steve Ray, Dustin Rhodes, Ron Simmons, Diamond Stud, and The Undertaker. I'm pretty sure Dustin Rhodes won that award. But, they had some good people in there, of course, like Steve Austin and Cactus Jack, and Diamond Stud and Ron Simmons, and The Undertaker, of course. So, most popular wrestler of the year, the candidates for 91, Bret Hart, Hulk Hogan, Sid Justice, Jerry Lawler, The Patriot, Roddy Piper, Ron Simmons, The Steiners, Sting, and Ultimate Warrior. I think Hogan won that, and I can't argue with that. I would have liked to see Bret Hart win, but I can't argue if Hogan winning that or Sting. Most hated wrestler of the year. The nominees: Tony Atlas, Cactus Jack, Ted DiBiase, Eric Embry, Ric Flair, Lex Luger, The Mountie, Jake Roberts, Sergeant Slaughter, The Undertaker. And I think Sergeant Slaughter won that, and I can't argue with that either. Inspirational Wrestler of the Year. The candidates are Tony Anthony, Bill Dundee, Robert Fuller, Hulk Hogan, Sid Justice, Jerry Lawler, The Patriot, Tito Santana, Ron Simmons, and Barry Windham. And I think The Patriot won that, and I think he won that because he won a title. I guess it was against Al Perez, and Al Perez's foot was on a rope, but they gave the match to The Patriot, and he returned the belt because he said he didn't want to win it in that type of fashion. So they thought, what a good person to do something like that. So I think that's why he won. Manager of the Year: Paul Bearer, Jimmy Hart, Bobby Heenan, Teddy Long, Christopher Love, Harley Race, Tony Rumble, Sensational Sherry, Slick, Tojo Yamamoto, and Alexandra York. And Bobby Heenan won this because even though he was retired at that time, people thought he was responsible for bringing Ric Flair to the WWF. So it's like, how can you not vote for the guy that's going to help produce the greatest dream match in history? So yeah, Bobby Heenan won that. Feud of the Year: Steve Austin versus Bobby Eaton, Cactus Jack versus Eddie Gilbert, Hulk Hogan versus Sergeant Slaughter, Nikita Koloff versus Sting, Legion of Doom versus the Nasty Boys, Lex Luger versus Ron Simmons versus Butch Reed, The Ultimate Warrior versus The Undertaker. I think Hogan versus Slaughter won that, so I can't argue with that, I guess. Match of the Year: January 11th, Ric Flair versus Sting. I think that was when Ric Flair won the belt back from Sting. January 19th, the Royal Rumble. March 21st, Ric Flair versus Tatsumi Fujinami. Match March 24th, Hulk Hogan versus Sergeant Slaughter. May 19th, Lex Luger and Sting versus the Steiners. June 9th, Steve Williams versus Bam Bam Bigelow. July 14th, Lex Luger versus Barry Windham. August 26th, Bret Hart versus Kurt Hennig. And, the Steiners versus Sting and Luger won that one match of the year. Of course, that was a good match. Of course, also Bret Hart versus Kurt Hennig was good. I also like the Barry Windham versus Lex Luger match. And I know that's the match where everybody was booing because, that was Ric Flair left and everybody was cheering for Ric Flair to come back. But as just the match part, I just like Barry Windham versus Lex Luger because I'm a big Barry Windham guy, so I thought it was a good match. Tag Team of the Year: Crush and Steve Dahl, The Enforcers, The Freebirds, Robert Fuller and Jeff Jarrett, Legion of Doom, The Nasty Boys, The Steiners, Chris Walker and Steve Simpson, and The Young Pistols. Now, The Enforcers won this, but, the Legion of Doom should have won. Because when they won the WWF Tag Team Championship, they won a triple crown of the WWF, NWA, and AWA World Tag Team titles. Nobody ever did that. So they said, I know I was real mad about that. I mean, I like the Enforcers. I like Arn more than Larry, but the Legion of Doom should have won that. So I remember being mad about that. And Wrestler of the Year: Bret Hart, Kurt Hennig, Hulk Hogan, Jerry Lawler, Lex Luger, The Patriot, Sergeant Slaughter, Sting, and Ultimate Warrior. I think Hogan won. I'm not sure. I cannot remember. I think Hogan won that, and I guess I can't argue with that. Continuation of Between the Falls. Continuation of Win, Lose, or Draw, where Larry Hennig is talking about Harley Race. Continuation of From the Desk, where Stu Sachs just reprinted the Vince McMahon interview with Larry King from Wrestling 86. Ringside, where they talk about the continuation from ringside, where they talk about Ronald P. Gossip becoming a good guy and joining forces with Jeff Jarrett and Robert Fuller. They talk about Cactus Jack's feud with Sting, how somebody's hiring Cactus Jack and Abdullah the Butcher to take out Sting. A continuation of Off the Top Ropes. The Arena Report. The Wrestling Inquirer. Roberts, Undertaker form an alliance. This is when they joined forces and they jumped Macho Man at the wedding reception, and the snake had the snake in the box that scared Elizabeth. Also, the Lightning Kid loses and regains the Global North Light Heavyweight Championship, Global Light Heavyweight title. Rhodes returns as a referee. So Dusty was doing some special guest refereeing, I think, during the Luger and Simmons matches. And Embry and Pritchard on the skids. I guess this is when Embry was about to turn on Tom Pritchard. And I guess Tom Pritchard was on his way out, and he was about to join Smoky Mountain and become partners with Stan Lane to form the Heavenly Bodies. And a career close-up of Ron Simmons. And this is when they had those posters. I didn't really put up posters, but I just hated that they had them in the back of the magazine like that, because if you did want to put them up there, you would ruin the magazine. So this was a horrible idea. I don't know why they did this. And of course, on the end, the Captain Lou and Bruno Sammartino hotline. So this has been the review of Pro Wrestling Illustrated, January 1992. And thank you for watching.